takes a lot of time to rebound. It's also probably something made out of very squishy material. On the other hand, on the right side, we have something that falls more quickly, barely compresses and rebounds almost immediately. So it's probably something that's very heavy and very solid, like not flexible at all. So this is a very simple example with a bouncing ball, but the same can be applied to any animation. You know, how many frames do you use to make your character turn around? How many frames do you use for your character to start looking at something that's happening in the scene? So if if your character takes 1 frame to look from here to there, maybe he's surprised because something is happening, something really weird. If he takes 10 frames, maybe he's suspicious, or maybe he's looking for something. So the timing is very, very important, and this is probably one of the key things that you'll have to take out of this session. It's all about the timing.
Exaggeration. I mentioned this one before. It's so important in cartoons to exaggerate actions because you have so few elements in which to convey an idea. You have one character on the screen, you have one action occurring, you have maybe just black and white lines, and you need to make it very clear what's going on. So most of the actions in cartoons in particular are totally exaggerated. So you can even be exaggerating to the point of non-realism. So usually, the last time I picked up a hammer that looked like that and banged it on the ground, it didn't actually change shape. But we accept this. We accept this exaggeration over on the right where you bang it so hard down on the ground that it's actually going to squish out and make those little impact lines on the bottom there. It's something that we accept in cartoons and which helps in cartoons because it conveys the action that not did he just swing the hammer down, but he banged it so hard down that it actually morphed a little bit at the end, just a little bit of squishing behavior down there. Very key in cartoons overall to just exaggerate the action so that it's fun and it's funny, and this is part of the point of cartoons, but it's also clear, right? This goes hand in hand with anticipation. You have to make the action very clear to the viewer because otherwise something's going to happen and they're not going to get it and they're going to walk out of your cartoon and never go to another.
And also, interestingly, this is something that's used a lot in actual live action movies. And we mostly don't pay attention to that because we get used to it or because we just want to be fooled. But if you think about mostly action movies where when they shoot a bullet at someone, that someone like flies back in the air by like 30 feet, or when you have 2 cars crashing in each other, one of them like just jumps in the air while the other is exploding. That's exaggeration. And it's just to make things more fun. They just push the realism like way too far, but it doesn't matter because we enjoy it.
Or how about one of my favorite is like the romantic comedy movies back in the 50s and 60s, and when they flash on the woman when she's supposed to be looking very beautiful and loving, it goes into soft focus. Now, I don't know, my eyes are getting bad, but I've never seen my wife actually go into soft focus right before me.
Dude, you don't love your wife.
I love this drawing. It's awesome. Where's the dog?
It's not the dog. The fire hydrant is leaking.
I think the dog was leaking. Fire hydrant just happened to be in the way.
Hey, next time we should have a survey in the audience to know what people are thinking about this drawing.
How many people think it was a dog?
You guys are sick. Anyway, so that drawing is actually a counter example of what the sawing drawing is all about. The idea here is that obviously, if you're creating cartoons and animations in cartoons, you have to be a good drawer. But you have to be a good drawer in a certain way. You have to be able to represent the same character at different angles. You have to be able to conserve the volume when the character is moving. You have to be able to draw a character in very flexible positions. What doesn't matter is your ability to be basically an artist. It doesn't matter if you're not very good, at having really good lighting and having all those details that you can see in paintings at the museum, because those things actually go against the principle of animations, and you can see that in pretty much every Disney movie. Just if you go home, try to grab one of those movies if you have some, or go on the internet to find excerpts of those movies. But what's amazing is in every scene when something will be animated, you can see that object in the scene because it's drawn very differently from the rest. So you can have this amazing background. You can have this really rich painting, like really beautiful, very realistic. And then in the middle of this background, for instance, it's a house, you see this door. And the door is drawn very simply, it has no details at all, very different, it stands out from the background. And you know that that door is going to be animated. Because what matters is that you want the drawings to be simple so that when they animate, they're not too confusing, there's not too many things going on. And that's what sawing drawing is all about. It's drawing at the service of the animation. So if you don't know how to draw, again, that doesn't really matter, because what matters is your ability to just have the main lines of what you're animating, to keep the volume. All the details, they don't matter.
And finally, hand in hand with solid drawing is appeal, making your characters actually appealing so that the audience is interested and compelled by them. This doesn't mean they have to be cute like Mickey, or have those bright, sparkling, huge eyes that are larger than their head, but they have to be interesting in some way. They can be an appealing evil character that's just so intriguing that you like the scenes where that character is on the screen. I didn't draw anything because I wanted it to be appealing, and that didn't really work with my artistic skills. So now let's talk about computer animation, which is not the same, right? There are a lot of elements in computer animation, GUI animation in particular, that are quite different from the stuff that we've been talking about so far. These cartoons that were drawn in the 20s and 30s and 40s, they were broadcast at rates of like 20 frames a second or 24 frames a second. A lot of those would be doubled or tripled, so you get effectively like 7 to 8 frames a second on these things, whereas we have 60 hertz refresh displays, right? We have computers that can do all these amazing things, calculate these in-between values. We have, everything is actually, we'll get into this later, but everything's basically pose to pose where the in-betweens are automatically calculated for you. We have these animation libraries that are out there to help you do your job and make all this stuff easier. Stuff is very different in the computer world. But much is the same. So let's go back over those rules. Remember, we've covered 12. We have 12 more to go, unless I forgot again, and there's only 11.
And the good news is that now we're going to talk less and show you demos.
There we go.
So squash and stretch. This is the first rule that we talked about, and this is also one of the rules that I've pretty much never seen used in GUIs. And the only good example of a squash and stretch animation I have is in macOS 10. So I don't know if you are macOS 10 users, but when you minimize a window, they have this animation called the genie effect.
Can we switch to the Mac, please?
And this is a perfect example of the squash and stretch. So that's not the one we want.
Excellent. And we switch to nothing.
There we go. So you can see here when I expand or minimize one of my windows, not only does it stretches to be sucked in by the dock, it also squashes horizontally to fit in the slot reserved in the dock. So it is a fun animation, doesn't distract too much, but every time you see it, you're like, wow, that's cool.
Hold the shift key down and do it again.
Yeah, that's a good point. There you go, if you want to see it in slow motion. Because apparently Apple, they're so proud of their animations that they give you a way to slow down every single animation in the system. I'd be happy if I was able to do the same in my apps. Back to the slides, please. So obviously, you can't do that animation in all your applications.
Can we switch displays again, please?
Yes, unless you write window managers for a living, which I'm pretty sure you don't. But we have an example of an animation that you can actually implement in your applications. So let's start with the ball. Chet loves to play with balls during conferences.
So here it is, the ball. So we've got a simple bouncing ball here. Now, if we have this bouncing animation, okay, there's gravity on it, that's nice, so we have some interesting timing going on. But if you're looking at a ball that has that sort of shape as it falls down, it must be made out of metal because it never changes shape anywhere. It doesn't really react to the bounce at the bottom. So we can do a couple of things there. We can make it squash at the bottom and give it a rubbery feel, right? It immediately changes the idea of what the material is that's being bounced, what the feeling of that object is. We can also make it stretch as it's falling down to give both that continuous motion thing that we were talking about, as well as a feeling that, this is actually a morphable material that sort of changes shape as gravity acts upon it. And then we can exaggerate the action. This is purely for the same reason that we did the shift key on the Mac, just to make it more obvious what's actually going on.
But we're talking about GUIs and how you can apply that in your GUI, so maybe you could show the button, or do you want to keep it for the next demo?
It does really apply very well here. So
we'll show you how you can apply that effect to an actual UI component.
You mean
this one? No, I think
the
the other one.
Oh. You mean the speeding button?
Yeah, this is a scripted session. We prepared everything before we started. Promise.
All right.
So here, this is exactly the same idea. We have this little stretch when the buttons start moving, and yeah, it's more obvious when you do it that way. So So obviously you don't want to slow down the animation to this point, but when the animation is not slowed down, you get this more realistic feel. And if you have stuff moving